Cayman, I want to talk about the future.
Let's talk about the future.
I want to talk about, we were just talking about God of War Ragnarok. The company who made said game, Sony Santa Monica, was recently in the news. Cayman, and they did a little interview with the Los Angeles Times, and this is the write-up from IGN, who recently spoiled something from God of War for me. But this is what they say, and I want to talk about it because I have some questions. So, Sony Santa Monica has a lot of different things in the works. This is from Ryan Dinsdale at IGN. Sony Santa Monica's studio may have just shipped God of War Ragnarok, but it seemingly has no plans to slow down thanks to multiple projects in the works. Speaking to the Los Angeles Times, Sony Santa Monica's creative director Cory Barlog said the studio is currently, quote, spread out on a lot of different things, end quote, presumably including the project he moves to after leaving God of War. It's unclear exactly what these projects are, however, as Barlog refused to give anything away. Santa Monica has also has an external development team that publishes third-party games like Hohokum and Twisted Metal, so these could also be included in the projects he mentioned. That being said, Santa Monica has over 200 employees, and though the majority of these were likely working on Ragnarok, the long-awaited sequel was completed around a month ahead of its launch on November 9. Given this was only last week, Sony Santa Monica is yet to announce what it's working on, but it's likely to have at least one or two major game projects in the works. One such game obviously could be the next God of War, though Sony Santa Monica has been very clear that the Norse saga that began in 2018's iteration has concluded with Ragnarok. So, Cayman, I ask you, obviously there will be no spoilers for God of War Ragnarok in this segment, mostly because neither of us have beaten the game. But what do you think the next Sony Santa Monica thing is? I mean, do you think they continue with God of War and tell a new story? Do you think they introduce a new IP? Do you think they take a long break and figure it out, like before they launch something? Like, where's your head at here?
That's a good question. I definitely think, well, obviously not finishing the game, so I can't explicitly state whether I think that God of War will continue. I think God of War will continue, but what God of War looks like after the end of this game,
that would be the
question. That is the big question. So I do think that somewhere that stories continue. There is a potential reality in which the next game is a prequel.
Sure.
They've done it before. Specifically they did with the two PSP games. They were kind of like sprinkled in like miniature stories within, and like I think one little prequel. Then Ascension was an actual prequel to God of War 3. So I think there's a reality in which like we might go back to Egypt before Kratos makes it to Norse. Now there is like, they did release like a standalone set of novels or like graphic novels. I want to say early this year, maybe, or late last year. They kind of was like, hey, this is what Kratos was up to in between Greece and here. And then they did one for like, what was Kratos' life like before Atreus was born? They got like, little miniature standalones. Yeah. So there's a chance that we might go back to Egypt in a prequel game. That would be really cool to see, like something like the way they did with Uncharted's Lost Legacy, and do like a miniature, like a standalone DLC that's like a smaller thing. But then you got to think that they're going to be building out an entire Egypt, and then that seems a little more like that would be a big game, not a small game.
Yeah.
So maybe not that. So I think at least in one instance, God of War's story will continue in some regard, presumably. Yeah. Heavy quotations around the presumably.
Right. My gut tells me, specifically for God of War, I don't know that a sequel would work personally because of how much character growth Kratos has had. And he's a completely new character now. Like, even I'm not even halfway through the game, and I like the Kratos that we have right now is so much different from the Kratos at the beginning of 2018. And as a player, I don't know that I'm super interested in a Kratos that hasn't grown like this Kratos has. But I mean, I trust Sony Santa Monica with my life. So like, I'm sure they would make sense and make it interesting and make it good. But without obviously knowing the ending yet, I would think if they continue God of War now, because come on, I would be willing to bet $30,000 we get another God of War game.
Yeah.
Is it going to be next? That's not what I would bet on, but like,
I don't
absolutely we're going to get more God of War.
I think that there's a good chance that they release, like, that there's another game that's a brand new IP, kind of like how Naughty Dog did going from Uncharted 3 to The Last of Us.
Yeah.
Because there was a break between Uncharted 3 and Uncharted 4, and that was The Last of Us. So I
Yeah.
think in terms of maturity of the studio, that's a like a legit possibility. But at the same time, too, like I'm going to be straight with you here. Like I kind of want like whatever if they do a new IP to like kind of switch it up, like
Me
Naughty
too.
Dog did. Like I wouldn't be upset if they gave us a game that was similar to like the first few God of Wars, where it was like pulled back camera, more action focused. And
Sure.
I mean, but then again, at the same time, like, I don't know, like Sony really is on the forefront of narrative driven, narrative focused games.
Yeah.
So part of me also is like, leave those other games for other developers and let them have a spot to shine. This is what I like you guys doing. That's selfish of me, but like I trust them to do that. But yeah, I don't know. I think before we get another God of War game, it'll either be some sort of DLC for God of War or it'll be a brand new IP. And what that looks like, I have no fucking idea.
Yeah.
I just really am hoping that maybe one of the smaller studios, because I think Sony still owns the rights to Mod Nation Racers, because it was done by the San Diego studio,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is kind of just only does MLB. So I'm
Right.
like, come on,
I
guys,
That's funny.
give
If
me
there's one
the.
studio I don't want to be wasted on a mod nation racers, it's Sony Santa Monica though.
You're implying that that's a waste for a studio, and I think that you could you imagine a narrative focused Mod Nation
Oh, see,
Racers?
that's the thing. If they make it a fucking narrative driven mod nation racers, count me in.
Good
But
lord, what a fucking
you know,
train wreck
I
that
would
is.
love I would love one of two things. I would love there are a lot of characters in God of War Ragnarok that I won't mention right now, but I could absolutely see a Left Behind style, Lost Legacy style spinoff in the same vein of like Miles Morales
Mm.
of a character or characters from this game. Without a doubt, I could see that. Would they do it? I don't know, but that would be cool. I always lean new IP and this kind of a thing. Like I would love to see what else can they do, because when what you mentioned when Naughty Dog went from Uncharted to The Last of Us, I think there was a little skepticism from everybody. Like, you guys are so good at the pulpy action. This looks like super heavy. This looks really dark and gritty. It looks good, but like, can they pull it off?
Yeah.
Fast forward 10 years, of course they pulled it off. It's my favorite game of all time. But so I want to see that for Sony Santa Monica. Like, what is, I mean, God of War is already dark and gritty, so I don't necessarily want to just see them do that, but I want to see like what else can they do with the level of fidelity that they make God of War Ragnarok in a different world, a different game style. Like, it could be cool.
Mm.
There have been rumblings online from other places before this game came out about Sony Santa Monica maybe doing like another thing in the fantasy realm. I would honestly maybe like to see it not be fantasy. I'd like to see
Yeah.
them like, what else can you do? You already nailed fantasy with God of War. If you're going to do fantasy, just do more God of War. But so I would love to see, I don't know what that looks like, but that would be really cool. There's also, I saw today on Instagram, I haven't watched it because I haven't beat the game, but there's a spoiler cast with the game director whose name I don't have off the top of my head. And he was saying like his favorite game of all time is Castlevania Symphony of the Night. And he was like, I'm going to get in a lot of trouble for this, but if they gave us the Castlevania license, we would love to make a Castlevania game. And I was like, wait a second. That could be really fucking cool.
Holy shit. Okay, you know what? Did you ever play Lord of Shadows?
Is that the one that was more like Devil May Cry kind of?
Yeah, it was more like
Just like
God of
way more
War.
action focused. You're right. It was more like God of War. Yeah, that could be really cool.
Just saying, I would fuck so hard with like this type of God of War game, but set with, Simon Belmont would be
Fucking vampires and shit. Are you
oh my
kidding
God.
me? Because like you look at God of War and God of War Ragnarok, and it is, you can tell his favorite game is Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Like, this game is a Metroidvania fucking dream
Yeah.
in AAA. So yeah, I don't know. That could be really cool though if we got like a really like story driven fucking AAA Castlevania game. That'd be
I'd
pretty
fuck
cool.
with that. I'd fuck with that. I'd
I'd
still
fuck
fuck
with
with
that.
Mod Nation Racers, but
Okay, a Mod Nation Racers.
When I say Pod Nation, I'm sorry.
Get off the podcast. No, a Mod Nation Racers game where the lead is Simon Belmont, and you can get out of the cart to fuck people up with your fucking whip and fucking whatever else Simon Belmont uses.
He's got the cross.
Holy
He's
water?
got his
the
cross. He's got his cross that he throws. Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean,
cool.
I'm just saying. Look here, like, hey, Konami is apparently decided to bring back Silent Hill in 1,000 versions of it. So, like,
true.
Nah, I definitely think like the unfortunate reality on that one is Castlevania will stay within Konami, and they'll
for sure
either make a more likely than not, they'll just make a really shitty fucking game out of whatever it is, or they'll just re-release the same fucking game for like the 900th time. It's like that's the one thing we never talk about is everyone always brings up Skyrim, right? And they're like, Skyrim's been re-released 100 times. Like, yeah, so is Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
True.
It is literally on. I off the top of my head, it is on all the original consoles I can think of. There was a re-release for PSP, PlayStation Vita. There was one for PlayStation 3, then one for 4, and I think that carries over to 5. You can play it on 5. I don't think they've re-released it specifically for 5. And then I want to say you can also get it on Switch. You could get it on
probably.
I want to say you could get it on the Wii.
I'm pretty sure there used to be a version. You remember that phone that would slide up?
Oh my god, yes.
The Sony one. I'm pretty sure they made like a downgraded copy for that. I could be thinking of just a different Castlevania game, but I'm pretty sure they made like a old school mobile version of that game too.
Hold on, I could also see this up because I'm very curious how many. Because I guarantee you, I could pull this up.
While you pull that up, I also it could be cool if Sony Santa Monica went down the route of like an Order 1886 type game, because that game is obviously dead because that studio only does VR now for Oculus. But it's a really cool world and it has the whole vampire vibe to it. I actually don't know if vampires were in the game, but I know werewolves were. But like that steampunky, like neo-futuristic vibe, that could be cool. Like a cool little like meshing of something like a Castlevania, but with something that Sony Santa Monica could own. But what do you got for me?
All right, so Jesus Christ, that was right. Yeah. All right, you ready for this?
Yes.
PlayStation 1, Sega Saturn, Xbox 360, PlayStation Portable, PlayStation Vita, PlayStation 4, Android, iOS, Wii, Wii U, and Switch. So and 11. Then technically you can play Xbox One should be mentioned because the Xbox 360 version was the arcade, which no longer exists, but the collection does exist. So yes, it is on
12
more NPC. So more than I think Skyrim has been. So
I wonder what that game is I'm thinking of that was on the whatever that phone was, because I thought it was a Castlevania.
There's probably a Castlevania game. You gotta think there's like 1,000 fucking Castlevania games.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Jesus Christ. It is insane how many of those goddamn things have been made.
Yeah. Well,
Patrick, I gotta sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I have like a huge announcement, but then I noticed you already have it in the doc, so never mind.
Perfect. Let us know what Sony Santa Monica game you would like to see next. Do you want more God of War? Do you want a new thing? But just whatever you do, don't fucking spoil this game for us. Yes. Or I'll find you and I will do terrible things. Not necessarily to you. I'm just going to do terrible things. What those things are, we don't want to find out. Right, Cayman?
Yeah, I wouldn't push buttons.
But that's the end of that. So let's wrap up the show, Cayman, with a very, very short calendar update. There's not a whole lot. I think going into Thanksgiving, there's just not a lot of like game announcements happening. So I have two things to talk about. And is this one of the two things you wanted to talk about? Okay.
Yes.
Take it away. Why don't you do these?
Okay, so I'm going to knock out the one that I don't care as much about. Dead Island 2 has been delayed to April 2023. And if I'm not mistaken, there was an episode that I said, we had this conversation, do we think it would be delayed? And I said, I don't think so. I think after the Saints Row release, they wouldn't do that. and I was wrong. And I will
Hey,
stand up here and accept that. Honestly, after the Saints Row release, I think that's a good idea for them to delay it because they don't need to take another PR blow like that. However, this is the big one. This is what I'm excited about, Patrick. I don't know
mhm.
about you. NCAA football is coming back, and it is coming spring of 2024.
It's a little disappointing because it was supposed to be 2023, but they were like, it's not going to be ready.
That's
But
fine.
and I think the reason that they said that is because it is only going to be on PS5 and Xbox Series. They're not doing a last gen version for it.
That's smart.
So, which is smart. And I think hopefully that means it'll actually fucking look good. Um, this is one that I probably won't play. I mean, maybe like if it feels new compared to Madden, then I might give it a shot. But I don't. I just don't follow college like I used to, and I know you do. You're a big college boy.
Yeah.
Go Volunteers, right?
Yeah. We don't
Um,
want to talk about that.
okay. What are they bad now? Have they done bad?
Well, we lost both of our defensive captains, and then our
Ah,
Heisman QB blew his ACL out in the middle of the game and played the rest of the game with a blown ACL. And then we got our asses kicked. And so it's not, our season's done. So
damn. So
we're done.
he's out for the year now because of his
Yeah.
ACL.
Yeah. He's
Damn,
out. So
a
it
goddamn
sucks. But
shame.
hey, look, we had a great, we honestly didn't think we'd do that well. So we had a great,
Hey,
but yeah, no, here's the thing for me. Like, and this might just be me, but I hate Madden.
sure.
I hate how well, I don't like the NFL. I like fantasy, but I really don't enjoy watching the NFL. Like it's
Yeah,
boring to me. But like college football, there's something about like the heart in college football that like
sure.
there's just doesn't exist in the NFL. And like I grew up, man. These were the games my brother and I would play all the fucking time together.
Oh yeah.
And so
I
I
played
just
so much NCAA football as a kid.
being able to actually win a national championship as Tennessee, even though it's virtually, is just something you can't take away from someone. And the fact
Sure.
we haven't had one of these since, correct me if I'm wrong, the last one I want to say was 2008, 2006, maybe?
Let's see.
It wasn't 2013. I think maybe it was 2013.
14 was the last one. So which would have
14.
come out in 13.
Yeah. Okay. So there. Okay. So yeah. So I'm for some. Okay. Whatever. Who cares? Either way,
I mean, it's still a decade.
It's been 10 fucking years since we've had an NCAA game. And there's just something that's really special about those games. I'm really excited to have them back. And the good news is this time around, we're not exploiting the players or the students who are in these games. They're actually getting paid, which is, I think, another reason why this probably was delayed to 2024 was because of the legal issues involved. But this is fantastic. This is fucking awesome. I'm very excited for this to come out. And you can catch me in spring 2024 repping my Volunteers to the playoffs. So
There
that's
you go.
what we'll be doing there.
It's funny that looking at that title or the cover, Denard Robinson from Michigan was on the title or on the cover, who I don't think had an NFL career, which
Most
is
of
just
them did.
funny.
Yeah,
Yeah,
most
which
of
is
them.
just funny that and like looking at who the other athletes were that were up for it. Eddie Lacy, who has since retired, Tyler Eifert, who has since retired. It's just funny that in 10 years, a football career can start and finish, and no one remembers.
Do you remember when it? I want to say it was Madden 2008. The Madden star on it was fucking Vince Young.
I sure do.
Vince
Heisman winner.
Young, Heisman winner, whose career in the NFL was non-existent.
Correct.
He played for
Correct.
the fucking Tennessee Titans, if I'm not mistaken.
You're correct. Yeah.
Trash.
And then I think he bounced around a few places and then
That guy. He was. I don't even. I would be surprised to know if he's even alive anymore.
I
to
was
be
literally
honest
about
with
to
you.
say, well, I think he might be dead.
I really want to say that he either is dead
He's
or
not
he
dead.
was in a ton of legal trouble or something. Was like the last thing I saw.
He's not dead, so maybe the legal trouble, but he's alive.
Either
I
way,
don't know if he's well, but he's alive.
Either way, good news is that we are getting it back, and according to our doc, that's all we can find for right now. Which brings
Correct.
us to the end of the show, Patrick.
Which brings us to the end of the show. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I had a blast. Like I said earlier, let us know what you think about Pokemon. Let us know what you think about Sony Santa Monica. You can follow me on Twitter, Patrick Schwag. You can follow him on Twitter at Kid Cayman. You can follow the pod on Twitter at SpotGameSpod or on
All right. Well, it looks like Patrick His computer hard restarted, so I will do the outro of the show. Thank you guys for being here. Like he said, you can follow us at the pod at Spot Games Pod on Twitter, Spotlight Games Podcast on Instagram, and Spotlight Games Pod on TikTok. Follow Save Trash Cinema at Save Trash Cinema on all socials. And guess what? Remember,